What's going on, everybody? And welcome to Ask A CISSP podcast. My name is Ryan Williams, and I am a CISSP, and I like to answer the questions of those breaking into cybersecurity or switching career fields and things of that nature. This podcast mirrors well with the Other Side of the Firewall podcast, where we highlight those movers and shakers and glass ceiling breakers, those people of color made to the other side of the proverbial firewall. So we're getting both ends of the spectrum. My special co-host for this episode is Alex Worsham. How are you doing, sir?
I'm pretty good this morning.
All right, that's what's up. So you reached out to me on LinkedIn. You agreed to be on the podcast, which I greatly appreciate. You had some really good questions, which I think will help other people. So you can give me a little bit about yourself. So how did you get into IT or cyber, and kind of what are your goals for the future?
As far as getting into IT is concerned, both my parents have been really deep in the IT field, so I was kind of, pushed into it. Definitely not forced. I love computers. I've always loved computers. Back in like 2013, I built my first gaming computer, and it just skyrocketed from there. Now, when I got out of high school, I joined the Army as a 25 Bravo informational technology specialist, and I've been in the military for the last 4 years. And ever since then, I've just been trying to learn as much about computers as possible. And I think I had a love for computers a little bit more than my peers. So I just eat the information up. As far as general classes, math, science, reading, I wasn't too strong at, so it did kind of deter me at first into, doing the full dive into computer science and reaching some of the deeper, more conceptual aspects. But once I started rolling with it, I just found I love it, and I keep studying it to this day.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, like I said, you gave me a really good list of questions. I definitely want to deep dive into those. So you said 25 Bravo. So I've worked with 25 Bravo, Sierras, Novembers. So I'm kind of familiar with the career field. Signal is awesome in the Army. I spent the last 5 years working for the Joint Communication Support Element when I was back in the States, which is very Army. Like, but you talk to Army people and they're like, it's very not Army. But let's just jump right into it. Like, what are some of your questions?
Sure. First and foremost, I definitely wanted to ask you about your background. You jumped perfectly to the JCSE.
Yes.
I know you've been in the military yourself, and just tell us a little bit about your experience and what you've been doing up to this point.
Got you. So still in, like, don't let the facial hair fool you. I hit 19 years, and I will hit 19 years in March. And I'm starting to go through my transition. Like love the Air Force. Wish I could stay in forever, but I feel it's time for me to make the transition over to corporate America, and kind of flex the skills that the Air Force and the Department of Defense in general has given me the opportunity to develop. So again, 19 years. I joined back in 2003. I've had three. I'm on my third career field and never changed career fields because it's kind of crazy. So originally I was what we call a 2E2. So we have AFSCs, Air Force Specialty Codes. They're very similar to your MOSs, but we like to switch ours up. So it was a 2E2 data maintenance. So I was the guy who would tear equipment apart to fix it, solder boards, things of that nature. We got folded into telephones and circuit actions and all that in cryptography. So I became a 3D1X2, which is cyber transport. So we're the layer 4 guys, pushing packets all over the place, building networks. Is where I started to get my love for Cisco. And just command line and building networks, designing networks, all that good stuff. Did that for the bulk of my 19 years, and slowly moved on to going from tactical to fixed comm, where I worked for the NSA for a period of time, to enterprise level when I was in Virginia. So I did that for almost 6 years. Working, I think we had 120 locations at the time, doing their base boundaries, things of that nature. That's when I started to get into project management a little bit, and mostly building up those skills. So Sec plus, Net plus, CCNA, all that good stuff. Then I moved to Florida, where I did JCSE for a quarter of my career. That's a joint communication support element. Those guys are everywhere. We are tactical, we're fixed, we're anything. Like you need a network in a parking lot, a desert, a forest. we make it happen. And that's why I got my project management skills up, got my PMP, as well as I started getting into cybersecurity. So I've been doing that for probably combined total of 6 years out of the 19. So 19 years of IT, almost 10 years of project management, and now I'm on like my year 6 of cybersecurity, because the DoD had a shift where it's like, okay, we build these tactical networks. How do we secure them? And they started pushing us towards like figure this out. And I guess I showed a passion for it. Like I really did want to know, like, how do I secure this network that I built? You know, how do I protect my baby? And then they pushed me towards getting my CEH, my CISSP, and then I pursued my master's in cybersecurity information assurance and finished that just before the pandemic hit. So like late 19, early 2020. And then since then, I've just been pursuing different avenues in cybersecurity. I'm really big into risk management. Like I really like that. I think it pairs well with my project management certification and experience. Um, and I have a lot of identity access management, things of that nature. Like I went basically from securing a port on a switch or a router to designing a network to be secure is kind of where I'm at in my journey.
Okay, nice. Yeah. Uh, I actually am a big fan of risk management myself. I've always loved,
Okay.
quantitative versus qualitative, the risk assessments, you know, the not so sexy stuff that a lot of my
Yeah.
peers see. I actually really enjoy it, the paper slog.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you. It's like people, I don't think they sleep on it. They just, people don't really enjoy it, but I don't know. I've always been that type of person. Like I love my time in QA.
Mm,
I I love looking at like the RMF packages and the authorities to connect and all that stuff. Like it's very dry material, but like you learn risk frameworks.
mhm,
You know, in pursuing my degree, a lot of my papers were on PCI DSS, so like the banking system,
mhm,
NIST, FISMA, those type of things, like governance policy. Like I enjoy it, but you know, people want to be pen testers and things of that nature. And I get it. Like forensics is cool.
mhm,
Um, but I like being a person who is not afraid to say no, but I will find a way to yes, right?
mhm,
Like I will figure out like this is what you want to do, and it might be unrealistic, but here's the compromise to keep you safe and mitigate those threats, and also give you some flexibility. I think that's very uh, underrepresented when we talk cyber to the public.
Yeah, most definitely from their perspective, you know, the commonplace black hoodie, dark room, no windows, hacking
Right.
away at a keyboard kind of thing. Okay, so can I dive a little bit more into your military experience? So you've been in for 19 years, and of course, thank you for your service. That is a long time to do this type of job, and I know the
Appreciate
military,
it.
the op tempo is so high, and the demand is so much for you and your family and stuff like that. Um, how is your home life balance when you consider the military and college and all the things that you've done in your career up to this point? How have you been able to, balance your personal life with your professional development?
Got you. So an ever evolving process. So I've always been really big into studying, and I like learning new things. So that's hard to balance. Like now, as I'm getting older, right? So I spent when I finally retire, I will have been spent more time in the military than as a civilian. Like over half my life will be military, and I'm trying to figure out what that looks like as we speak. So that transition is still it's still a work in progress, and probably will be for years. I would say what I learned was you have to make time for your family. So like the military is going to ask a lot of you. And that's just that you volunteer for that, right? We're all volunteers. Like no one is being told they have to be in the military. And you have to figure out like early on, I would say, like it took me a little bit longer, um, where to take a break. So like when you have your leave, when you have your times when you have a lull, you need to use that time to focus on whether it be your family that you built or your family that you came from or your friends or your pets, or you just have to find some time to be with those people who care about you. Not to say that your military family doesn't care about you, because they do, but this is a season, right? Like even 20 years is a season of my life. And those people will always be there for you if you properly nourish that relationship. So I'd learned that probably halfway through. So I was very focused military, like I need to learn as much as I can. I need to get all these certifications. I need to continue to build. I need to craft, get my skill up, and what have you. And I still want to do that. I still do, right? But I find time like for my family. It, it's kind of hard to explain right now because I've been overseas for over a year, so I'm kind of away from them. Mission calls, right? But the focus is like when I have that time, I try to communicate with them as much as possible. And when I get back, the goal is to find a business or corporation that respects my time, and I can spend that time with my family.
Okay, yeah, definitely. So getting going back and looking at your pivot into cybersecurity. You started with network administration. You said you worked with a lot of hard devices, routers, switches,
Right.
firewalls, implementing them, building networks, and securing them. When you started to pivot into the security aspect, and you started to touch on the cybersecurity, what was the most difficult part for you? And did your background prior to going into cybersecurity help at all with that transition?
I think it marries well. So I was talking to Aisha Hollins on Tech Connect about it. I think because you can come into cybersecurity without an IT background. Like I'm not gonna like a lot of people are like, no, you need to know, yada yada. Yada. You can if that's the way you function, the way that your mind works. Mine does not. I'm a very tactile type person. I need to touch it. And if I touch it and then I can break it down, then I can understand it at a higher level. That's just me. That's just the way that my mind works, right? So I think it helped me phenomenally. Like I know what a network is. I know how to build a network. I know how packets move around that network. And then here are the things to protect it. And baked in from the beginning, right? So early on in my career, that was not baked in there. That's not kind of what they taught us originally. Like security was always a thing, right? Like there's always security above, but it was never a thing where it's baked in at the beginning. Like, okay, let's think about how to build this network and how to secure it properly. That kind of evolved over time. So I would say probably 2009 or so. So probably 5 or 6 years into my IT experience, that's when we started talking about 8570 requirements, and to touch the network, you had to have Security Plus, which is I believe is a really good introduction into cybersecurity. Like a lot of people are like, nah, Security Plus, because everybody has to have it, yada yada yada. And I get that if you're just testing a test, but if you're testing the knowledge that you've learned, like you're actually learning the material, it's a boon. And like here's everything that we could possibly throw at you at entry level, and then how do you apply it to your network? And I think that really helped me out a lot. I think my help desk experience helped me. I did a couple years help desk when I was working for NSA. About half my time was circuit actions, so pushing packets around all types of different networks, Cisco, Juniper, Sonnet, all that good stuff. And then taking over the confocal point and actually doing the help desk work, because it teaches you um, more than just your portion of the network, because we're all segmented, right? Like Bravos do a certain thing, Sierras do a certain thing, Novembers do a certain thing. Same thing for us, right? We have client systems, we have transport, we have radio. Like we're all broken into different components. But when you work help desk, you get to see all of it. So like I'm learning directory services stuff, right? I'm learning exchange things. And then how to tell customers or how to break down to customers like what you're asking for is not a thing. And this
Yeah.
is how it works. And this is how we can get you to a better place. And I think that all ties in together. Uh, so I always push like if you can work for a company and on the help desk as your entry in, I think it gives you a really good point to pivot into cybersecurity. But you don't have to. That's not everybody's journey. But
Mm.
it definitely like the tech helped me get into cyber.
Yeah, I really love that about the IT field, how flexible it is, how one person's can start to traditional help desk route and go all the way up to senior level CISO, or you could just come right out the street, start studying your own, building your own computers, and you know
Right.
um, get where you need to be.
Yeah,
So
and
as
then and
far
nothing's wrong with labbing. Like I want to put it out there as well. Like lab is very close to real environment. Like so when you're learning switching and routing, you lab a lot. Same thing with pen testing and things of that nature. Like lab, enjoy it. Like because every company's not going to bring you in with no experience and then nurture you and then build that up. But if you bring something to the table, like hey, I have try hack me and all this other things like hack the box. Like I have all this um, virtual knowledge I can bring to the table, then I think you'll more likely be hired.
Mm, okay, how was your experience with Western Governors University? I know you said you got your master's degree for them right before the
Yes.
pandemic started.
So it was great. I really enjoyed it. I think for me, it took 18 months. I think I could have shaved, or I'm sorry, 15 months. I think I could have shaved it down to a year. But they allow you to go to school at your own rate. So like you'll sign up for like 2 classes, but you can take up to 4 or 5. Um, Pace yourself. So I signed up for 2. I wound up taking 5, and then I had to take 3 months off as I burnt myself out
Yeah.
because they'll just allow you to keep going. Like they'll encourage you. They give you the tools. You get a mentor who will follow up on you, and then as you knock those classes out, or he or she will be like, "Yeah, go ahead, take another one. Like, do you feel comfortable? Yada yada yada." Like, yeah. And then that 5th class, I was worn out. It was forensics, and I was like, "All right, I need to take a break." So I took 3 months off. Then I came back and I finished up. So if you pace yourself, it's really good.
And what made you decide to pursue the master's degree? Assuming you don't have your bachelor's degree from WGU.
No, so my it's crazy, right? So my associates is an Air Force associates in IT.
Mhm.
Um, but then there was a point where I was going to potentially get out of the military, and I was a computer science dropout coming in. So like I was a computer science major. I was working full time, going to school full time. It was not working out for me. I tried to pursue it again once I joined the military, and I quickly learned that uh, uh, math is not my strong point to a certain degree, right? So when I got into calculus, I was working the hardest I had ever worked at a class, and I was still only getting a C. And I was like, "There's more math. We're going to continuously go up from here." So I looked at all of my electives. I said, what do I enjoy doing? And it was psychology classes. So psychology, sociology. So I pivoted hard from IT into social psychology is what my bachelor's was in. Um, and then I finished it off just in time to pursue Security Plus, Net Plus, and all that stuff. And my passion for IT grew again. And then I started to look at, oh, what's the cybersecurity thing? And I took a very long educational break. I still pursued certifications. I got those and what have you. But then when I was looking at, okay, I know my time in the military could potentially end at 20. I don't really have aspirations to go too far over 20. Let me look at a master's. And I was like, well, I don't want to go back to psychology because I'm not going to pursue that when I get out. I'm like really big into cyber right now. And I always will have a passion for IT. And that's when I started looking at schools. Park was where I got my bachelor's at. They had a really good program, but then I heard about WGU from coworkers and the flexibility there. And I was like, no, I'm going WGU.
Yeah, that's almost the same story. I was at work one day. One of my coworkers pulled me aside. "Yeah, are you in college? No. All right, we're going to the Ed Center right now. Show me
Right.
WGU. We sign up for the courses, and you know, it like you said, it just allows you to get so much done, get all the resources up front. You don't have to um, sink a lot of your time into a lot of the fat, for traditional
Right,
colleges.
right, right. And you just have to be so. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be in a brick and mortar. I teach at brick and mortar. I enjoy that aspect as well, seeing people interacting with the students, seeing the light bulb go off. Like I really enjoy that. Um, but you don't always have time for that as a student. Sometimes, like for us, we deploy a lot, we go TDY a lot. Like you need the ability to just do it on your own at your own speed, and it really afforded me that.
Yeah, most definitely. So throughout your journey so far, obviously you're a media creator now. You've been putting out things on YouTube and LinkedIn and several different platforms. What inspired you to become a media creator, specifically for IT and cybersecurity?
So I kind of always wanted to do something. I wasn't sure what it was, whether it be a YouTube channel or a podcast or something like that. But actually, the COVID, so the isolation aspect of it,
Mm.
pushed me over the edge. So when I arrived overseas at my current assignment, we had to be isolated for a long period of time, just because you had to make sure you weren't symptomatic, you weren't going to spread it coming, from country to country, all that good stuff. So I was locked in a room for 2 or 3 weeks. And I have a mentor. So Jeff Lodick, he's a retired Army. He's author, podcaster, public speaker. Like he does all that like during and after his retirement, right? He had a podcast, and I was like, well, teach me, like let me know, like how hard is this? And then he started explaining the tools and what have you. And then here's the entry level, like here's how you can come in and do it and what have you. So then I recorded a small session by myself, hated it, absolutely hated it. I was like, I can't just talk in a vacuum, especially about this material because it's coming off dry. I'm a monotone type person. How do I make this more palatable? And as well as how do I showcase more people who look like me? Because at the same time, I was learning that we're very diverse in the military, right? When it comes to IT and cyber and all that stuff. I started reading articles because I'm like, oh, this might be my last assignment. Let me see what like on the outside. And I was seeing that like at the time we made up 7% of IT and cyber. Like
Mm.
7% were people of color, which is a huge difference than what we have in the military. And only 3% of those were in those senior level positions, so C-suite positions.
Mm.
Uh, and I was like, how do I find these people? Because it's such a small community. How do I network with these people? And I was like, you know what? I think the podcast might be that connective tissue. So we began to record. Since then, the podcast has evolved, right? It used to be one big podcast, about an hour,
Mm.
hour and a half. We had different topics, what have you. We cut back on that. Not on the content. We cut back on the time. We noticed the trend was people would listen to like the first 15 minutes, and then that'd be it. We're like, well, we're producing all this stuff. Let's break it into smaller chunks. I talked to again, Jeff, my mentor. He was like, yeah, like you got to make it palatable. You got to make it so people can consume it. So we broke it down to now we're uh, Monday and Tuesday are our topics. They last about anywhere between 10, 15 minutes. And then Wednesday we do a discussion because we always liked bouncing ideas off of each other because we all have different viewpoints, right? So I'm by trade a cyber transport guy, and I have some really good knowledge in cyber when it comes to that aspect of cybersecurity and policy governance, that type of stuff. Then we have Shannon. So Shannon is a vulnerability assessment background, retired Air Force. He's a information system security officer, so an ISO. So he brings that to the table. We have Levon. We all met in Virginia, by the way, at the enterprise level. And we're in 3 different time zones now. But Levon brought to the table, when I met him, he was working Active Directory, Exchange, and now he's a cloud architect. So he brings that cybersecurity to the table. He's also a graduate from WGU with his master's in cybersecurity. And we're all 3 people of color, right? So you got 3 Black men discussing cybersecurity, which there's not a lot of that out there. There are some podcasts, but there's not a lot of them. Like we're definitely a minority in the space. And then we have people on the show like your Chelsea Pierres, your Aisha Hollins, your Gabe Davis, Johnny Jones, who come on the show, and these are all also people of color who are doing things in the space, right? We show that, hey, we do this. Like, this is not these people are not unicorns. These people exist. They've built upon years of experience and what have you, and there are people like us in the space. And then to kind of land, because it's a long answer to your question, right?
Yeah.
I started to communicate with people on LinkedIn who had questions, right? Like, how do I get into cyber? Like, how do I pivot? Like, your Tish Harper's and things of that nature. I thought about, like, why don't I just make that an episode? Like, why don't I get these people on the show so I can show them, I can show the audience that, hey, you're not the only one pursuing this, A, and then B, there's a huge amount of people of color who are trying to get into the space. So now we have it from both ends of the spectrum, right? We can show you that C-suite level person, and we can also show you the person who's making that change or trying to get into cybersecurity. So I was like, let's do it. So that's when this Thursday episode came out. And then Fridays we talk about everything else. So we just try to unwind. It was like, again, you gotta make those contacts, right? Like, I get to talk to some really good friends who are across the ocean about what they've been watching, what they've been reading, just what they've been doing with their family. And we get to show that aspect as well to our listeners. Like, you don't have to be cybersecurity IT 24/7. You can take a break. You can pursue something else.
Most definitely, most definitely. Yeah, I saw on your LinkedIn profile, or as we were looking through that, you had some involvement with Blacks in cybersecurity, and I saw that you are definitely an advocate for minorities in the cybersecurity space. And yeah, you're definitely someone we look up to.
I
As a
appreciate it.
person of color myself, trying to break into the cybersecurity spectrum.
Yeah, definitely. Like, and the network is growing, right? So we're just a little tiny piece of it, but like, Twitter is booming with Blacks in tech and cybersecurity. Like you mentioned, you have the Cybersecurity Association, the Blacks in cybersecurity as well. And then they share my content, like they'll reshare the post that I put out there. So, like, it's nothing but love in the network. Like, definitely, if you're not a part of it, definitely join one of these various organizations. You also have, like, WESIS for women in cybersecurity. I know there's some Latinx groups as well, indigenous peoples in cybersecurity. Like, there's a space for you. You just have to put in the search bar.
Okay, definitely. And I'm going to pivot to some more hard-hitting questions. Some ones that, not usual, typical interview questions that we kind of put together. So what has changed recently in cybersecurity in this field that you dislike? So maybe a certain tech
Gotcha.
or a certain mentality, way of doing things.
There's necessarily a way of doing things. There's also a negative aspect to the to reaching out, because there's a lot of misconception, right? Like, it's there's a difference between IT and cybersecurity, right? So IT is
Mm.
the bones, the skeleton. This is what builds the networks and makes them function for a company, versus cybersecurity, which is the protection of the company. And whatever governance that it falls within. So they're separate, but they marry well together. And there's a misconception. People don't know what to pursue, and when they reach out, sometimes they get beat over the head, like, oh, you should know better, or you should know this. Well, they don't. That's why they reached out. So that part I don't like, but I think that's social media in itself. I see more positive than negative, but there is a lot of negativity sometimes when somebody just asks a question. So I will never do that. Like, if you ask me a question, even if it's something I've answered 1,000 times, I'll answer it 1,001. Like maybe you didn't hear it. So this is how this functions, and like, help people out. So that part I don't like. I don't like when people are like, oh, you don't understand, you only be here. Well, you didn't understand at one point either. So like, help them, and then shout it from the mountaintops. Like, get more people like us in the space.
Yeah, most definitely. Um, Okay, so what certifications or credentials or skill sets are not actively being used by you right now? What's kind of things that you've gathered and they've been sitting on the shelf?
Oh man. So things I'm not currently using. So I'm not currently using my CCNA. So I'm not banging on the keyboard doing command line stuff, and I do miss it. Um, but as you progress in the military, you get less technical and you get more managerial. It's just the
Mhm.
way the space works. So I'm a senior non-commissioned officer now. The only time I get to touch equipment is when I sneak off. When I'm trying to teach somebody something, like, oh, like I will drop paperwork in a second. Like, oh, this is broke. Let me help you. But it's a balance, right? Like you can't take over. Like I'm supposed to be training and teaching. Um, so those skills are a little rusty. I tried to read up as much as possible, but again, you atrophy at a certain point. So I definitely miss command line stuff. And then I would say everything else, I use an aspect of it, right? I'm not using all of my PMP. Like the way the military does project management is slightly different. So I'm not using it to the PMI standard all the time because it's different. Scope, schedule, cost is different for a corporation than it is for the military. Uh, Aside from that, I try to use all aspects as much as possible. So that's why I got into teaching. I was like, well, I don't want my CISSP to go to waste. So when I finished my degree, I immediately looked for a campus that would allow me to come on as an adjunct. And I've been doing that. So yeah, I'm not physically touching stuff, but I'm in, putting that knowledge out, trying to get people to understand, especially people who are not again from IT. Like I might have a background in, I had a psychology major in one of my classes. So like we're day one, we're talking about networks, and that's not her thing. So I'm trying to, show her the DARPANET video that they always show us, like when we're
Yeah.
in training. You know what I mean? Like stuff like that, like trying to make it practical to her, and then she got A in the class. Like, so I really enjoy that type of stuff. So I would say there's always a way to use those certifications in some aspect, but uh, you can't use them all the time. Like, there's no magical job. Like there's some full stack jobs that are out there, but they're few and far between when it comes to using everything all at once.
Yeah. Okay. So, how did your upbringing affect your development in IT and cybersecurity? And attached to that is, do you think that you are who you are today because of your upbringing or in spite of your upbringing?
Ooh, that's a deep question. Okay. I would say I think my upbringing complemented my personality, which complements what I do. I'm a tinkerer, right? So growing up, if something broke, I would take it apart. And if I could fix it, I would fix it. Or, most things did not get fixed. Most boom boxes died there on the table, right, while I was doing surgery. But it gave me a passion to figure things out, not necessarily to be cheap, but if I can fix it. And then I've taken that into IT, and then I think it married well with like project management, things of that nature, like thinking on the fly, um, and trying to make that stuff work. I would say I'm an only child, so communication, or I grew up an only child. I have a half brother and sister, but the majority of my life I was by myself, right? So I would say the military helped raise that part of me. Like I have no problem speaking in front of people now. I have no problem like in the teaching aspect because these are things that they teach you discipline, they teach you communication skills. You have to be able to explain to higher up, just like you would have to explain to a C-suite, like a CEO, like, all right, this is how this is impacting your business, or this is how this is impacting our troops, or this is how, you know what I mean? So you get a lot of that as well, especially as you move up the ranks. And they nurture that. I would say nothing, there would be no despite. Like, I didn't have anything, like everybody has their struggles and their challenges growing up and what have you. I don't think any of those have hurt me. If anything, they've made me work harder. And again, that goes down to personality, right? Like some people are born a certain way. Like some people are hard headed. I would put myself in that category, like in a positive way. If I want to do something, I'm going to try to figure out a way to do it. Um, and just press forward as much as possible. Like that's not the way everybody is wired, but that is just I didn't make that. You know what I mean? I was just born with it, and I think it's helped me a lot in the military, and I think it's helped me to make better um, decisions and choices. Mitigate risks and things of that nature. Like I don't ever want to not be a part of the communities I'm part of because of uh, bad choices or mistakes. I can see something and learn vicariously through that. Like, okay, he touched fire and it burnt him. I'm not going to touch that fire.
Mm.
But let's figure out a way to put the fire out to make it safer. So,
Okay. Next question. Do you believe in the pay for mentorship model? If you're familiar with that.
I'm not. I did read ahead, and I saw that when I was like, I'm not going to ask beforehand because I want you to teach me what that is.
So in
Because
my
I
mind,
don't like it from
yeah,
the from just the reading part. I'm just like pay for
mm,
mentorship.
yeah. So there are certain individuals out there or certain corporations whose entire job is to uh, offer mentorship as a service. So me being a student or someone new to cybersecurity, and instead of reaching out to you, for example, I would look at someone prominent in the cybersecurity space, and they would charge a certain rate or maybe a subscription-based service or one-time payment
Oh,
in
okay.
order to receive that mentorship. Then they might, and it's not like it's different from like resume writing, for example, where you pay someone to organize your collective experience. You're more or less
Right.
paying someone um, to try to guide you or build the path for you, as a mentor or coach or, non-commissioned officer would do.
Got you. So now that you explained it to me, it's kind of always existed, right? Like you buy a self-help book, you'll subscribe to a personality's podcast or whatever, or um their video series, like if they're a teacher, right? Like, so CBT Nuggets is a big one. Like you pay some pretty good money, but you also get some really good material. Um, I would say if done properly, time is money. And if this person has collected a ton of experience that can be impactful to you in your journey, it may be beneficial to pay for that time. Because again, time is finite. I don't do anything like that to my knowledge. Well, I mean, kind of like a teacher, right? So if I'm teaching a class, the university's paying me for that. It's not free, but I also give out free as well. You know what I mean? Uh, so like on my podcast or on my page, or when people reach out, a ton more people reach out to me and I answer them through email than show up on the show. A lot of people just don't, you know what I mean? That's not their thing. Like they don't feel comfortable being on the show, but I don't want to not answer a question. You know what I mean? Because I would feel as though that was kind of like not spiteful, but if I can make the time, I'll make the time. And I have a lot of time away from my family. So in a roundabout way of answering your question, I think that could be beneficial. Like if that person is like a guru in what they do, perhaps you need to pay for their time, go to their seminar. You know what I mean? Like people do that, right? Public speaking is humongous. I'm not in that sphere per se, but it may be something I pursue in the future. And then public speakers get paid for that time by that company or that business. Like they're not necessarily being paid by the people, but they're providing a service to the people who have paid ahead of time. So
Yeah.
um, I can't knock that I can't even uh, knock that hustle. Like your time is worth money. Um, but if you're not providing quality with that, whatever you're selling, then that is a problem. But it's always been like that. People have always been selling snake oil. So that's a thing as well, right?
Yeah.
Um, so so you've educated me. So upon reading it, I was like, pay for mentorship. Mentorship is a service, but yeah, I mean that's kind of what it is, right? Like you're paying for these
Mhm.
seminars, you're paying for these videos or these subscriptions to whomever. Like you know how many books I've read
Yeah.
to get to certifications and whatnot. And I paid for that book or that subscription or what have you to get to it. So um, I think it has value.
Okay, so now I have kind of a long question. I'm trying to funnel it down, make it a little bit more concise. Um, the question is, does the different types of mediums, right, in which we use to communicate now
Mhm.
today, like texting, video conferences, Discord groups, and things like that, have a profound impact on developing the relationships in cybersecurity? Does it hurt them relationships in your experience or your opinion, or does it help build them to be even stronger relationships? How the comparison between face-to-face and electronic communication, that kind of thing.
So I think more avenues to learn and to connect to people is always positive. You're always going to have disinformation. We try to our best to weed that out, right? In our communities, typically you see people get outed or you get pushed out because of it. I think especially now, it's more than beneficial because we can't always make contact with people due to whatever wave of COVID is out there or whatever uh, meetups and whatnot have to be canceled because of it. So I think it's definitely beneficial. Um, I've always been even before COVID, I've always felt like finding a network was always beneficial to you and a boon to your ability to find that person that may be able to break down or explain something just perfect to you. Um, so I think it's always beneficial. I think people should always be seeking communities, and I think especially now they're worth their weight in gold.
Mm,
And again, there's always going to be disinformation out there. You just have to like trust but verify. That's always the model, right?
mm,
Um, like, okay, I heard it from you. It makes sense. Let me go hear it from two or three other people also to see how it mirrors one another, and then just go from there. Like, never just trust one source. And but now you have a billion of them, right? You have access to almost every human being on the planet.
yeah, I know certain countries, the internet is becoming one of their human rights. They're actually writing in the
Right.
laws like you should have access to the internet. You know, so it's definitely
Right.
growing.
Right. I mean, at some point, it's going to be just, well, like obviously you need running water or you die. But
Yeah.
at some point, just to get information, like just to be fair, like you need multiple viewpoints, um, just to be able to make your own informed decision. And I think that that will never go away. Like just as the newspapers, the printing presses of back in the day, the internet is that your Twitters, your Facebooks, and whatever
Mhm.
network comes up behind them.
Yeah. So how do you evaluate yourself? Do you compare yourself to your peers at all? And if you do, what kind of factors do you determine that based off of their education path or their age, maybe their years of experience in cybersecurity?
So I use it as a measuring rod of where I want to be. So I find people who are already in that space, who are already at that level. And let's just like you're asking me these questions, I ask them that question, like what got you there? What did you do? Everybody's path is different. I believe everything happens for a reason, right? So um, the way I got to where I'm at now is because of a lot of smaller things, a lot of people and influences, mostly good, some bad. You know, you learn from your bad teachers just as much as you learn from your good teachers. Um, so I look to those people and I ask those questions, just like you are. Like, hey, how did you get here? You know, what I mean, how many years of experience? Who are your mentors? Like, what did you look at before you got here? It's a big thing when transition, right? Like, I've reached out to Veterati. I got a mentor who's in a space that's in the city I want to retire in. Like, how did you get to where you're at? What resources did you use to get there? Uh, never in a negative way. Like I never see somebody and be like, oh man, I'm not measuring up because they're doing so much better than me. Everybody has their own path. Like some people don't have to work as hard as I did. They just absorb information differently than I do. Um, it just is what it is. We're all built differently. We all take information in differently. You just have to learn and master the way that you absorb information
Mm.
um, to get to where you want to be at. So I know I'm a tactile learner. So I go touch it and I figure it out. And then I build upon that. Some people, they just, it's almost osmosis, right? They take the textbook, put it to their head and it's just like, oh, I know. I know everything.
Yeah.
I can't kick myself because I can't do that. It's just not the way I was built.
Okay. And kind of the reverse side of the coin for that question, which you kind of alluded to, is have you ever experienced imposter syndrome? And if so, how do you deal with that in your day-to-day life?
Oh yeah, it's almost uh, I wouldn't say it's daily. It's not daily, right? My 9 to 5, I feel very confident in what I do. Um, not because I'm cocky about it, but I have years of experience, right? I can think back to over the course of 19 years and kind of figure out what I need to do and where I need to be. But as I branch into the transition, oh yeah, you definitely feel it. It's like, oh man, like they've been doing this on the outside for 19 years. How do I compare to that? What do they do? Um, it's to ask those questions, find those people. I have not had too much negative feedback, right? Like I reach out to somebody and I usually get an answer. It's every now and then you run into somebody and they won't give you an answer. I'd rather get that than get disinformation. Like
Mhm.
I'd rather you ignore me than give me bad advice. Um, it's something that everybody's going to have to deal with, or maybe not. Like it's something I will always have to deal with, I believe. And the way I combat it is through application. So, like, I know I'm about to have a breakthrough or I'm about to reach a new milestone
Mhm.
by the level of my discomfort. Like, if I don't feel comfortable, it's growth.
Mhm.
Because I typically don't choose a path that will cause me harm or cause um, like I'm not gonna pick something bad on purpose. You know what I mean? Like if I feel like okay, I'm about to do like I went live with Aisha the other day. Never went live before. I record everything. It's like I need to see it before everybody else sees it to make sure it makes sense. It's on brand. I'm not talking crazy. So I went live and I felt super uncomfortable going into it, but it was a great experience. Um, Same thing with teaching. My first class that I taught, I felt very uncomfortable. I felt the imposter syndrome kick in. Like, oh man, I'm a whole teacher now. Like,
Yeah.
like, am I ready for this? Like, are they going to learn something? And then the proof is in the pudding, right? Like, I teach something 5 different ways, and finally figure out a way that clicks with that student. And you're like, okay, I got it. I'm good. I'm good. Um, so again, it's that discomfort. That's growth. That you're feeling. So pursue it and push through it. Like we all got it. It's just a matter of honing our craft and getting better at doing it.
Yeah, most definitely. And one of my final questions for you is, what are some of your plans for the future? Can you kind of lay us out where you expect to go in the next 4, 5, 6 years? Of course, you're retiring soon. You're going to move into the enterprise.
So the transition is real, right? So I'm probably 14 months from being a whole civilian again
Mhm.
in life. You know what I mean? Like so that is a little worrisome, and not because I'm afraid of finding employment or anything like that. It's just it's going to be different. Like when I was prior to me joining the military, I was a teenager.
Mhm.
Uh, I only had a handful of jobs. Most of them were fast food. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like none of them were IT related. None of them were cybersecurity related or project management or what have you. And over the course of 19 years, I've learned discipline. I've learned organization, and I've become educated and have practical experience. And I want to apply that in that community as well. It may be difficult. It may be easy. I'm not sure yet. I'm not out there. But again, I'm reaching out to those people who have made the transition and just trying to learn like what were the challenges and the hurdles when they got there so I can try to avoid them again vicariously. Like
Mhm.
what fires did you touch? So I can avoid those. Um, and I hope in 5 years to be spending much more time with my family and doing something that I love. So right now I'm thinking policy and governance might be for me. Might be somebody's ISO. But ultimately, I don't know if I could do it in 5 years. It may take me longer. I want to be my own boss. I want to be, in the space, maybe a VCISO, maybe a consultant, maybe something of that nature. But again, I learned through application. So I don't want to jump straight to that
Mhm.
and shoot my shot. Maybe I could, maybe I couldn't, but I want to work for someone doing those things, build those building blocks, and then be able to take all that knowledge I learned on the outside world and then do it for myself ultimately. So 5 years would be great. I don't,
Yeah.
I don't know if I could do it that fast though, right? Um, but that's ultimately where I want to see myself still creating content. I don't know if it'll be on the same platforms I'm doing it now. 5 years from now, it could be something new out there. I could
Mm.
be doing it in the metaverse for all I know, if that's ever comes to fruition.
Yeah.
Um, but and teaching, like I always want to have that in my back pocket. I always want to pass on my knowledge to other people in some regard, like whether it be still doing the adjunct for a different college, or maybe I'd go into public speaking space. I don't know.
Yeah, and being a adjunct at a college and doing podcasts and YouTube, it's a great thing. I mean, they're always saying to give back to your community. The best way to learn is to teach, et cetera, et cetera. But for
Right.
someone new in the cybersecurity space, how would you recommend they start to give back to their community?
By joining a group, like so these groups, patronage is king. Like
Mm.
you make the community better, it makes more people join. Then just the way human beings work, right? The numbers cause more people. Like, oh, there's 10,000 people in this group. It's got to be full of good knowledge, and it usually is. Join those groups. Join your Blacks in Cybersecurity, your Black Cyber Associations, your WESIS, like join those organizations and bring your talent to them and ask those questions and build upon each other, right? If you find a resource, bring it with you. I always try to update my here's my top 10 things I did when studying for the CISSP. Here's my, I think I have 9 for PNP. And I bring those into those groups that I join. I just joined like I think it's blacks in is it Black Geeks in Cloud? I can't remember the exact title because I'm on the spot, but I just joined that organization because I want to learn more about the cloud, right? So and in it, somebody asked about CSP, like because that just happens to be something they're interested in. So I brought that with me. But here you go. Here's my top 10 videos I watched, materials I read, things of that nature. Just bring yourself to the group, and any resources you collect along the way, bring those as well. And then you just make that group so much better.
Great, fantastic. Well, that's pretty much all the questions I had for you. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to ask you these questions and delve a little bit more into your background and what you're all about. And I think we talked about a lot of good stuff here.
Hey, no, I appreciate it. Like, I'm glad you reached out to me. I hope more people do as well. If you have anybody you want to refer, send them my way, and we'll try to make time to get them on the show as well. And if they don't want to be on the show, they just want to ask a question, I'm always here to answer what I can. I'm not going to have all the answers, but that's why I have a network. So if I can't answer the question, I will go find you an answer and bring it back to you. So thank you for your time. Like again, time is finite. So thank you for being on the show. Thank you for asking those questions. If you have any more questions in the future, I'd love to have you back on the show in the future. I haven't had any repeats yet. Still trying to work those schedules out because people are busy, right? But if I get you back on the show sometime this year, definitely have you back on, have your questions, see what you're pursuing, like where you're at in your journey as well, and definitely share this with your friends and family and whomever else. Like it definitely it highlights your passion as well as your thought process, right, to future employers and people you may mentor in the future. But with that being said, I go ahead and land this plane. Thank you for all those who are listening or watching. Continue to support us. Watch the other side of the firewall podcast. Like again, Monday and Tuesday are topics. Wednesday's discussion. This Thursday episodes are all about talking to people who are trying to get into the space, have those questions, and then Friday everything else. Right? Like what do we think about the latest Marvel flick? We'll talk about that because you have to unwind people. Like you can't always be studying. So sometimes you have to take time for yourself and your family as well. Hit up the website, www.theothersideofthefirewall.com, to get to all of our social medias. You can hit me up personally. I'm at RyRy Security Guy. That's RYRY Security Guy on Clubhouse, LinkedIn, Twitter, and TikTok. And you, Alex, where can people find you?
Mostly just on LinkedIn or Facebook, just Alex Worsham, type it in, probably the first one there.
All right, spell your last name so everybody's tracking.
Worsham, Worsham.
All right, there it is. Definitely link up with him, connect, follow, whatever, to support this gentleman as well. He's on his journey. So if you're on your journey as well, or you're at the not the end of your journey, but you're further along, then he's looking for mentorship as well. So definitely hit him up. With that being said, stay safe, stay secure.